Live from ZTN Studios in Harare, Zimbabwe. Welcome to the Mint Special, our discussion this afternoon, the economic panorama. This broadcast is brought to you by Zimbabwe's TV network ZTN and our partners, Labour and Economic Development Research Institute of Zimbabwe, Ledriz. Please also tune in to Economic Panorama on Capi Talk every Thursday at 7 p.m. Hello, I'm Andy Hodges. If you have any comments or views on our show today, please contact us via our Facebook page, Zimbabwe's TV network, or via our Twitter handle at ZTN News. Now, COVID-19 has exposed structural challenges in the Zimbabwean economy and most importantly highlighted the need to make the economy more sustainable, resilient, diverse and innovative. Zimbabwe is particularly vulnerable to the COVID-19 pandemic. Zimbabwe's economy is highly informalized, with about 76% of total employment in the country being informal. The informal sector is a major player in the economy as it contributes an estimated 48% of the gross domestic product GDP of the country and an estimated 42% of the total national employment. The informal sector bears the highest vulnerability owing to poor working health and safety conditions and lack of social protection. According to the International Labour Organization ILO, the projected declines in earnings in this sector are highest in Africa and Latin America at a staggering 81%. Now, joining us this afternoon to discuss the economic panorama are Nyasha Muchichiwa, Senior Researcher at the Labour and Economic Development Research Institute of Zimbabwe, Ledriz; Wisborne Malaya, Secretary General, Zimbabwe Chamber of Informal Economy Association, ZICHIA, and we will be joined later in the show by Jacob Mafume, Councillor at the city of Harare. We also had invited the Minister Nyoni, Minister of Women, Small and Medium Enterprises. Unfortunately, she is traveling today. However, we will endeavor to try and get her on her show to get her views about the issues affecting the informal sector. Gentlemen, welcome to the Mint Special.
Thank you, Andy.
Now, Wisborne, as I always like starting at the basics, so can you please just share a brief background about your organization and some of the work that you do?
Zimbabwe Chamber of Informal Economy Associations, ENDI, was started in 2002 with the assistance of the Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions. The whole idea was to try and harness the challenges which are affecting the workers after the economic meltdown through ESAPs, and a lot of people were being retrenched from their workplaces, and a lot of informal economic activities were now coming up in the country. So this was just a platform, a way to rescue the organized labor so that people can speak with one voice on issues that affect them.
Okay, particularly in the informal sector. This was
yes, in the informal sector. And under that banner as well, we work under a 5-pillar approach, which is to organize, educate, empower, represent, and advocate for the interest of workers in the informal economy. This is cemented by the vision we have, which is called Decent Living Standards for all Zimbabweans in a Stable Economy, and a mission which is alleviating poverty through transforming informal economic activities into the mainstream activities.
Well, you have a full plate there representing your members. Now, it's sad to say, of course, that your members have faced challenges in the context of COVID-19 recently. What is the current situation amongst your members at the moment?
The situation is bad. That's the truth. I think since the lockdown started, end of March, everyone complied, including the informal sector. And along the way, we started to see unexpected actions on the ground, where demolitions came from Norway, where the government made a decree to say, take advantage of these lockdowns to clean up places where informal traders work, and the cleanup ended up being demolitions. And these demolitions went to extreme levels, which, if you allow me, I'll mention as the program proceeds.
Okay.
And at the same time, we have seen that there was a commitment by the government along the way to also give cushioning allowance to workers in the informal economy after an outcry, so that at least they can have something to survive from. Since most of these people we are talking about, they live from hand to mouth. And to this day, I can confirm not as many have received that cushioning allowance, and they are still stuck in the houses. So you then come to realize the lockdown has been extended several times, and the levels of lockdown, some have loosened some actions where maybe the formal setups have been allowed to trade, and a small part of the informal workers, those who are into like vegetable vending, have been allowed to trade. Okay. But you discover that not everyone is into vegetable vending. And now, as we speak on the ground, I don't think we still have lockdown in the country. The lockdown is there by name, but by action is no longer there. People are now sneaking out of the lockdown, going to those spots where they used to operate from, or identified other new spots where they can start to do what form of trade so that they bring food to the table because people are hungry. I will give you one example of a lady, I think whom we heard through Star FM last week. She was a vendor. Unfortunately, she was impregnated by a certain man, and she was dumped. And she has triplets. And she was surviving from selling food vending to feed the children. Since the lockdown, she got stuck. And we are so much thankful that Star FM played a role for her to get assistance. But I'm just trying to highlight how the effects of the lockdown are at the moment on workers in the informal economy. We have a lot of untold stories.
I'm sure we do. Now, Nyasha, Labour and Economic Development Research Institute of Zimbabwe. So I really want to look now at the economic and labour effect of the informal sector during COVID-19 lockdown. Because when you look at some of these numbers, 48% informal sector is contributing to GDP. So if the informal sector sneezes, so technically can the economy, Nyasha?
Thank you for that. I think, as you have highlighted, that 48% of the GDP is coming from that sector, and that sector now is on lockdown. So there are no operations, there are no activities, there's no income being raised, and livelihoods are being lost in that sector, in that economy. So that means if 48% is not active, that means 48% of the whole nation in terms of its income is not also active. That's a big loss in terms of income. That's a big loss in terms of aggregate demand. And over time, we've been crying that Zimbabwe, the biggest challenge we have is that our aggregate demand is very low and it's always falling. But from this now, it's going to be even fall worse and it's going to be off. So recovery also is going to take time after the lockdown. But also looking at the micro level, looking at the individuals, they have lost their livelihoods. Like what Comrade Malaya has just said, they have lost their livelihoods. So you are talking about income insecurity, you are talking about food insecurity. And as you've, if you have been following, there's a lady in Chitungwiza who opened a soup kitchen. So initially when she started, the numbers were around 200, 300. Now we're talking about 1.5 people lining up for food every night, meaning that it's getting worse. If someone was in the informal economy, they started off with probably chipping off their profits, and now they've chipped off even their working capital, and there's nothing, and them to recover after COVID is a whole nother scenario that we are looking at.
I think that's the point. I mean, people look at the informal sector and sort of say vendors and so forth, but what they don't understand is the money that the informal sector actually brings into the economy, whether it's with the purchasing goods and services, whether because they need to feed themselves, they need to buy that from other places. Anyway, we'll have to take a quick breather. If you have any comments or views on our show today, please contact us via our Facebook page, Zim Papers TV Network, or via our Twitter handle at ZTN News. You're watching the Mint Special, our discussion, the economic panorama. The broadcast is brought to you by Zim Papers TV Network, ZTN, and our partners, Labour and Economic Development Research Institute of Zimbabwe, Ledriz. And of course, please tune in to Economic Panorama on Capitalk every Thursday at 7 p.m. The Mint Special will be right back. Don't go away.
Life will never be the same again.
Absolutely. How do you tell someone in Bari or in Soweto that they should exercise social distancing?
Every single one of us, barring a few, are praying more.
What is the health economic cost of what we are trying to achieve?
I don't know whether his chairman knows he runs at about 9 in the morning.
Yeah, I've just got symptoms, so I just called the doctor and then he just advised me to have to stay at home, eh?
Welcome back to the Mint Special, our discussion this afternoon, the economic panorama. This broadcast is brought to you by Zimbabwe's TV network ZTN and our partners, Labour and Economic Development Research Institute of Zimbabwe, Ledriz. Please also tune in to Economic Panorama on Capi Talk every Thursday at 7 p.m. Now, we're now joined by Jacob Mafume, councillor at the city of Harare. Jacob, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure being here.
Now, before the break, we had been asking Nyasha and Wisborne about issues concerning the informal sector and the state of the informal sector that's been there. And one of the issues that Nyasha Wisborne did talk about was demolitions. Now, Jacob, there has been widespread demolitions of informal economy working spaces, particularly stalls during the lockdown. What was the thinking by the City Council behind that move?
Well, first of all, I have to make it clear that it was not a City Council initiative. That thing was a national security initiative. It was in relation to issues of the health, security, and the assessment by the experts that the informal sector will provide an entry point to COVID and to death. And I'm no expert. We as a City Council are always with the people, are always with the vendors. We had a view that it could have been done differently and that we could come to just work with our informal sector in a better way. The informal sector has carried this economy for the past 15 years. They deserve better, they deserve order, they deserve us to come with humane solutions to their plight. And the plight of just destroying their premises at a moment's notice is not a City Council initiative. It's debatable. The security experts say it was necessary. Probably a debate for another day. It's on the
health issue, isn't it?
Yeah, the health issue. Yeah. It's probably a debate for another day and a debate for health experts. But we do believe, as a City Council, and I speak for the mayor, I speak for my party, we do believe that we could have done it with due notice, COVID compliant manner, minimum harm to people's economies and livelihoods, and in a situation where they will be able to recover from the devastation.
Now before I move to Wisborne to respond, because I'm sure he wants to, the question is that once you've demolished these stalls, what did you do then? What happened to the vendors whose livelihoods were in those stalls? Because now they had no place to sell their wares.
What we did is, as the council, we then realized that our citizens, the residents of Harare, are in problems. We then decided to look at the way our markets are organized, to look at the way our vegetable market is organized. It is centralized at Mbare. We've realized that we can decentralize the vegetable markets so that people don't have to cross across town to purchase from one place in Mbare. So we are actively decentralizing the vegetable markets, that is the perishable produce market, your tomatoes, the things that need to be sold within a day or within a short space of time. We also looked at the Coca-Cola market, the Mbare market, the Mpedzanamo. We are now building structures. If you go there, you'll see that we've reorganized, we are building structures, we've received sponsorship in terms of structures. We're then looking at the suburbs to look at that at every shopping center. We need to rebuild our markets so that the informal sector is able to operate with the mainstream shops. Then we're looking at things like bringing back what we call the hawker's license. If you remember, in the old days, one could be, you would get a hawker's license. So to move around with your trolley, to move around with your cans, or with things like you sell. Remember, if you went to primary school, during my time, you would be able to buy buns and milk at break time when you went to school for a coin. So we need to reintroduce the hawker's licenses. They are working for the ice cream people. They are there. So we need to come up with designs where a banana trolley, a fruit trolley does not need to look shabby, and we introduce that as a hawker's license. Nowadays, people are using their small cars, the Honda Fits, and stuff to sell things from there. Yes. So we introduce a hawker's license until those who are in charge of our economy manage to exercise the demons they are talking about.
Wisborne, you heard Jacob there. He had a lot to say about building new structures. Your comment?
Yeah, I think what is key is first the point to say this was a national security. And this is an issue which we feel as informal workers organizations, we still need a serious action to positively accommodate the efforts. I think from your paper you have talked of 76% contribution to employment, 48% contribution to the country's GDP. If we talk of now during this lockdown, I'm still waiting to hear what the researchers are going to say about the 2% deficit, because we believe 2% tax was mainly coming from workers in the informal economy, and we are going to see how this is going to be
so
on
reduction
our
in government, government taxes.
Exactly.
But I want to focus on what Jacob was saying about, can you confirm that the City Council has gone to these various markets around the city and is trying to build new structures? Are they trying to re-register vendors to come back to those and so on, and markets also in shopping centres around the city? Can you confirm that it actually happened?
There are some areas where structures are being built, but the pace is very slow. To be frank, we don't know how long will this take and how long it will keep people out of work. And at the same time, it's not only about marketplaces for those who are into vegetable vending. There are many sectors, sections of informal economy which are affected. Some were into manufacturing, and some were into different types of service production provision.
But it isn't just vegetables, as you said earlier.
Yes, it's not only vegetables. Yeah. So that needs to be looked into to say this framework which is now on board, is it taking care of all these associated sectors? And also, one other key thing is also outside taking care of these sectors, we also have to look at the policy issue to say, do we now have a policy which decriminalizes the operations of the informal economy? Because that's where the main thing is. Every action takes place because there is that criminalization of any work of informal traders in the country. So at local authority level, we talk of the bylaws associated. Have they changed? In as much as there's good action taking place, what about the bylaws part? Have they changed?
Nyasha, I want to get in here because, the informal economy, and I think it's a misconception. People see it as vendors, but actually, I would call it SMEs. A lot of small and medium enterprises are in the informal economy, and even some vendors, I would regard them as SMEs to a certain degree at different levels. So what strategies have countries implemented to build resilience post-COVID-19, particularly with regard to the informal economy?
I think the first point is like what you have highlighted. It is important that we are not, that it's no longer just a sector, but it's an economy with different sectors. You have manufacturing in there, like what he has just highlighted. You have also those vendors who are selling vegetables or selling sweets, but you also have all these different facets of the economy that are there. So what is important now, and building on resilience going forward, is the first thing that we have to look at also is that, are we giving them space to operate? For example, now you need to get a letter for you to be traveling from your employer. Most of the workers in the informal economy are self-employed. Then who writes that letter for you, for you able to go to your trading area or to produce the goods that you were producing before? So these are some of the things that we need to look at as we are still in this lockdown period, to say, how do we get them active again? How do we get that 48% reactivated again so that they can be able to produce and be able to participate in the economic development?
But is there an argument then, from what you've just said, to go the whole hog and formalize the sector in the sense of the informal economy, and I'm sure I can bring it across to you, Jacob, to informal economy, to register, to create companies, to become much more formalized in their structures rather than just be one woman or one man bands?
I think there is a space for formalization. The ILO is ILO recommendation 204, which talks about transitioning from informal to formal. Then there are a lot of things that we need to look at, a lot of strategies, about 7 strategies that we need to look at in terms of formalizing the informal economy. The biggest challenge that we have faced in Zimbabwe, when we talk about formalization, we are talking about taxing. So when we say we want to formalize you, people understand that you want to tax them. This has been the narrative that we have been pushing. So the question is, what is the incentive for me to formalize if I'm just going to be taxed? But we have to move it as a whole. It's a composite, it's a holistic approach to looking at formalization. What are the incentives? Are there opportunities for me to get social security? Up to now, more than 20 years later, NASA still does not allow people in the informal economy to contribute. So what is the incentive for me to formalize?
I like that, Jacob. I think that's a good point, and I want to bring it into the council's plans. Council makes revenue from residents, okay, including giving out licenses, whoever rates, taxes, and so forth. So, bearing in mind what Nyasha said there about formalizing the informal sector, if I can call it that, how does council plan to integrate the informal sector into the city's development against the backdrop of declining formal sector? So you've got on the one side of city council, you may have declining revenues from the formal sector as people aren't working formally, and increased revenues in the informal sector, which is where Zimbabweans are starting to work. What would be your...
Well, we are looking at the revenue structure of council. It has remained traditional. It has to become transaction based. Our taxation is physically based. It's based on the ratepayer. So what happens is that for you to be a ratepayer, you must own something. You must be an owner of a house. Now, house ownership is a model of shelter. Like it or not, the housing for all by 2000, housing for this, education for all by this, has completely failed. No one talks about it. A person can live in Harare, be a lodger in Harare, and die as a lodger in Harare. But that's not only in Harare, all cities around the world, apartments, blocks, and so forth. Rental has become a form of shelter. So what then that does is that we have to relook at our revenue model. So in other words, how do we able to catch those people who would have fallen off the taxation model as it is? And how do they dock in? With the informal sector, it's because of the various licenses that we have. They are able to pay in, but it's not very clear what they are paying for. Sometimes, if you are moving around, am I paying for a toilet at my place? What service am I going to get? Shelter, storage, free right of passage to work. It's not too clear. Then you've got the shop owners who are complaining that the informal guy is selling what I have in my shop. I'm paying the rates, he's paying less, but he also sells Colgate. He also sells shoes. He also sells sugar. So there's a conflict there that we need to look at. We have introduced a number of bylaws that we have sent to central government. They've not been enacted. Devolution has not been fully implemented in Zimbabwe, and therefore we are not getting the bylaws approved. We are still using pre-colonial bylaws in many instances for health, for even traders and everything. The last time somebody looked at the health of a city in this country was before independence. Sometimes, in terms of bylaws, looked at these things.
Yeah, but if I can ask you, I mean, building on what Nyasha said, I mean, you're talking about restructuring the way that the city council's finances are and where you can get revenue from. But it's back to what he's saying. I mean, in essence, the ordinary person or the ordinary informal market or people in that market will say, but city council just wants to tax me, and what are you giving back? What's the contract that the council has with those people? When they pay you, what services do they expect to get? Because as you said, they're not ratepayers, they don't own property, they're rentals. What's the contract that you have with
what we do have is that, of course, we give them the physical space where they need to operate. We are supposed to provide shelter where they are operating. We are supposed to provide security of business. We are supposed to provide them access to various markets. And I believe that we should be doing more in terms of cushioning them, in terms of taking responsibility, in terms of financing, even how do we look at financing their businesses, how do we look at the leveraging the city, corporate sector, international community that needs to contribute to the informal sector. Sometimes, combis get a bad rep, but I believe that they've transported the city for over 25 years. People have gone to college, people have gone to hospitals on a combi. Yes, there have been accidents. Yes, there have been all these things. But my heart bleeds out because they've, at a time when government could not transport people from point A to point B, they stepped up to the plate. And at the present moment, they are getting the flack. They are stuck at home. They are not working. People are not looking at how to improve their form of business. It's actually society is looking at how to eradicate them from the map altogether, which is why some of the reasons why this society as Zimbabwe does not develop, because we are so harsh on fellow citizens when we take certain measures, and these citizens feel excluded from what vision Zimbabwe is.
Now, you've heard both, and I think the point about taxes and why should I set up a business because I'm just going to be taxed again, and also you've heard from Jacob what City Council would the contract will give back to the vendors, the security, the locations, and so forth. Your comments?
The comment is I will just start from what Nyasha said. I think we have worked well with Ledriz, and we even developed a paper which we are calling the transition of the informal economy. And that paper is a draft policy position paper. We have submitted it to the government in various structures, including the city of Harare, where we were profiling what we think should be a proposed solution toward the formalization of the informal economy. And we were also communicating key things even in terms of revenue, where the government can even benefit more on revenue.
When did you do this document?
Since 2000, and we have submitted it to the government in 2018.
And to the council?
We reviewed it in 2019. The same?
Same 2018.
Yes.
So it's their council.
Ministry of Local Government. We have submitted to all the key structures.
Okay.
Even as we speak now, we have even initiated another program which we are calling the Informal Economy Agenda, where we have come up with about 7 thematic areas, which we are going to launch recently to present to the government to say, we are saying the informal economy are not criminals. If you incorporate or put up policies which promote actions of the informal economy, this is what can come out. We believe support of the informal economy can bring Zimbabwe back to its proper state, even without foreign investment. This is what we believe. Because every action which is required for Zimbabwe to be a better Zimbabwe is found in the informal economy. What is lacking is the support. And you can see it now during this COVID, to say many sectors are now playing the role they are now working, but the informal economy still said they are being locked. The question is, what are they eating? So if there is no that mindset to say, what are these people doing? How are they surviving if I'm not providing food for their table? If that mind does not click in a certain brain, then that is the challenge we have.
All right, so we're going to have to take a breather. If you have any comments or views on our show today, please contact us via our Facebook page, Zim Papers TV Network, or via our Twitter handle @ZTN News. You're watching the Min Special, our discussion, the economic panorama. This broadcast is brought to you by Zim Papers TV Network, ZTN, and our partners, Labour and Economic Development Research Institute of Zimbabwe, Ledriz. Please also tune in to Economic Panorama on Capi Talk every Thursday at 7 p.m. The Min Special will be right back. Don't go away. The Min Special, our discussion this afternoon, the economic panorama. This broadcast is brought to you by Zim Papers TV Network, ZTN, and our partners, Labour and Economic Development Research Institute of Zimbabwe, Ledriz. Please also tune in, as I've said, to Economic Panorama on Capi Talk every Thursday at 7 p.m. Now, Wisborne, government recently announced an 18 billion Zimbabwe dollar recovery or stimulus package to help counter the effects of COVID-19 on the Zimbabwean economy. And of course, in there was about 2.4 billion, if I'm not mistaken, for social security safety nets, as well as government announcing $300 per head per member of a family in terms of some protection for the more vulnerable in society. And there was 500 million for SMEs in there as well. So Are your members aware of these facilities, and what action is being taken by your members to try and access them?
Yes, our members are aware of these facilities. Actually, like I indicated, we are an organized setup, so we tap into every information to do with the informal workers, and we spread across our members. We have managed to put up a database which we have submitted to the government through the Ministry of Women's Affairs and SMEs Development, so that our members can benefit through their various provinces. From first the cushioning allowance, we have also done a database. I think there is another part which is talking of supporting the youths and the SMEs in action. We have also done that and submitted. We are still awaiting for them to also benefit from that cushioning. But however, we have not stopped on that only. We have also, as an organization, tried to have our own efforts to look for support for the members. To date, I can confirm we have managed to give almost about 3,000 members cushioning allowances during the lockdown, of an average of about 400 RTGs.
Just as your own organization?
As an own organization, yes. And we have also tried to approach local authorities in various areas to partner with them as a way of trying to encourage them to say, allow people to trade. We have managed to secure about 5,000 sanitizers, the 100 meals, and the masks, as well as the gloves, and we a bit of some cash to contribute toward the partnership of our structures with the local authority to spray some operational spaces for the workers in the informal economy. All this is a way to try and show how we also respond to issues of COVID-19 and how we are positive about making sure health and safety is promoted from the informal economy.
Because you can't depend on the government for everything. I mean, at some point you have to do some things yourself. And this is what you're doing with your members.
Certainly. Yeah.
Nyasha, let's get back to the 18 billion that Wisborne was talking about in the SMEs. Are we clear yet of the steps that need to be taken to access this money? I mean, I know that the government did announce it, and they were putting in place some committee to determine the modalities. Is it clearer now? Is it clear how the SME facility can be accessed, what is required, and so forth? What information do you have?
I think the biggest challenge that we have had so far is from the get-go, it hasn't been clear on how people can access that money. What is it that you need in place for you to be accessing it? Are they going, if they are loans, how are they going to be repaid, and the time frame that is needed to repay them? I think also if you look at the SMEs and looking at the informal economy, I think it will be also detrimental to them at the moment to give them a loan to say start a business, when at the same time we haven't cushioned them in terms of the challenges that they have faced in terms of the food security and so forth. Because already they have lost out. So the first thing that if you give them money, the first thing they are going to be looking at is their livelihoods, to say, how can I buy food? So how do we then, if you look at other countries, what they have done, they have the unemployment insurance fund, which then cushions the food security and the livelihood part. Then you have these loans coming in terms of prompting and reactivating their businesses. So I think government also needs to look at that and make sure that those two are balanced. But also what is also important is the issue of social dialogue. How do you bring them in to have this discussion to say, we are bringing this to plate, and this is what is on the plate, and you have a discussion around that, and how do you make it work for everyone? Being more inclusive rather than just say, there's this package, then no one really knows how to access that package, and no one really knows how that package is supposed to work. So there is need for social dialogue and to be more inclusive in bringing up these things into play.
Jacob, I think Nyasha raises a good point. I want to ask you two questions. First, of course, when the demolitions of stalls happened in Harare, which Wisborne and you have alluded to, was there this social dialogue? Was there a communication between council and the vendors or the informal sector? And the second part of my question is that Harare City wants to be a world-class city by 2025. That's the vision. So what plans do you have for a vibrant informal sector enterprise in light of this vision? So 2 points, social dialogue and...
Yeah, I must say, regrettably, there was no social dialogue. I mean, this was a blitzkrieg, draconian, thumb-sucked solution by some person who uses probably algorithms to define national security threat. Up to now, we cannot see the rationale. No one can understand why people went into an orgy of destruction, where the resources to do the destruction came from, why there was so much pleasure and excitement in destroying people's things, and no consultations with the council, two, the people who are affected. I mean,
but to be fair, I mean, this has happened around the world. If you look at Wuhan, the epicenter of the coronavirus, that's exactly what the Chinese government did. They went in and got rid of places where they thought that corona could.
Yeah, but Wuhan is a different case. Those are the guys.
I'm just giving you an example.
Yeah, they are responsible for it. The whole world is.
There was no social dialogue.
There was no social. There's no scientific evidence. We did not have Wuhan portion.
So safety.
Yeah. We had no. It's a consultation. You cannot. People think. These are living organisms. It's a social contract. People think they need you to make them understand why you are doing things. We are not sitting there like chicks in a nest, waiting for the mother eagle to bring food and so forth. We are all part of an organic thinking mechanism that has agreed to live in Harare. That's the point I'm making. And so gotcha. I really feel for the families whose livelihoods have been destroyed. I really feel that the bureaucrats, we have not done them a good service. They pay us to think. They pay us to provide solution. We are in positions that we are in to be able to make it easier. That's why they allow us to get cars. They allow us to get allowances under the assumption that will make it easier for them. Not that once we are in these suits, we come back and bring Armageddon to their livelihoods.
Now, the second part of the question, in terms of your vision, world-class city by 2025.
Yeah. What we need to do is to create, these catchphrases are tricky. But anyway, we've committed to world-class, whatever that means. We are committed that we carry everybody along as a city. We design a smart city, as it were. I think that is our manifesto and that is our mantra. We demise a smart city. Our places of work must indicate that we are a smart city. The way we handle our database must indicate that we are a smart city. The way we provide services, the way we provide and get services must indicate that we are a smart city. We need to transit from a 19th century city to a smart city which is able to interact with its stakeholders. In other words, the informal sector. We need to know where they are, record them. We need to bring them into the social security net. We need to have a citywide national health scheme. We need to bring them into NASA. We need to bring them into the revenue stream whereby they feel integrated with what everybody is doing. We need to simplify the registration of small SMEs.
But that also implies that you need to then up your service game, isn't it?
Yeah, we need to up our service game.
No doubt.
We need to make it
collection.
Smart. Yeah. We need people. There's no need. People don't need to queue at a certain place to pay for their license. They should be able to do so on their phone to say, I want to be a hawker or I'm operating at this place.
That's the plan.
That's the plan. That's where we are going,
okay.
And that's where we should be with the assistance of the residents, so that we become a smart city, and then we generate employment. A city is an artificial settlement. It is what we make it. We have to invite investment as a city. We have to make sure that we provide the enabling environment and regulatory framework that speaks to what we want it to be, and bring everybody abroad, bring all the stakeholders. And we as a city, through our mayor, we are committed to engage with the various documentation and various processes that way. Then there's an issue that you raised, which I think I must speak to. The stimulus package, there is no stimulus for the cities. And I think it is the polarity of our politics. The cities are taking the brunt of the loss of revenues. Our revenues fell from 30 million to 5 million a month. We have no money to run these cities. We have no money to provide water. We have nothing because the whole city is under lockdown. Yet there was no stimulus package to the cities. So people are talking about services. The cities will not be able. Everywhere in the world, big cities have been given stimulus packages in order to build these things fast, in order to rearrange the city so that it becomes COVID compliant. That's why our queues for transport are not COVID compliant. That's why our places of work are not COVID compliant.
So are you calling for a stimulus package for cities?
Yes.
Particularly for the city of Harare?
We need stimulus packages not only for the city of Harare, we need stimulus packages for every city. We were asked by government, our municipal police is working. We were asked by government, the infectious diseases hospitals are run and built by the cities. All the cities, Beatrice, what's its name? Wilkins. It's an investment by the residents in the city. We're not getting compensation. We're not getting money for those things.
So that's the call from the council.
That's the call from the council.
Must come forward and help.
It must step up to the plate and help the cities to survive this COVID thing.
Okay. Nyasha, unfortunately, we are going to be running a bit out of time, but I wanted a couple of questions here that I need to try and squeeze in here. Really about national savings. You know, it's a fact economically that national savings build resilience in any economic system. So how should best you think we should be to structure national savings? Because here you have high inflation, you've got possibly price increases happening sometimes daily and weekly, and people just don't save. How do you think that we can endear a culture of building national savings which helps us, of course, through times like this? And unfortunately, I have to ask you to ask them quickly.
No, that's fine. I think if you've, like what if you've noted in other countries, they've gone back to their sovereign fund. This is where they are drawing from in order to support and the underprivileged, also support the unemployed, and also give resources to people who cannot fund resources for themselves in terms of making a livelihood. So it's something that has to be inbuilt at the national level also, and also at the individual level. As a nation, we are not saving. So you can't expect the individuals in the nation to also save. But as a nation, if we start saving, and if I save, and what I've saved has value, five days, if you look at the pricing mechanisms that we have now, if what I'm saving today in 5 days' time does not have a value, why should I save? So these are the big challenges.
To get the economics right?
We need to get the economics right. If our money, if our currency has value, people will save. But if I can't save, the best thing that I can do is I can buy what I can buy now, because if I don't buy it today, I might not be able to buy it tomorrow.
Save, spend.
So don't say you've spent. This is basically what the economy is telling us. Right. So we need to build that and make the economy work first, build savings at the national level, and also allow people to build savings individually.
Now, I'll try and squeeze in a final question for both of you, gentlemen, but and I'd like you to be brief and to the point, please. Wisbon, your recommendations towards building resilience for and in the informal sector. What would you recommend, very quickly?
The informal economy is the economy of Zimbabwe. Give it a chance. So put up some strategies of how people can work whilst also complying to the COVID safety measures. And people are able to do that. They know they don't want to die. They know COVID is there. So give them a chance. And number 2, decriminalize the work of the informal economy. Accept them as part of the key contributors to the country's GDP, and our Zimbabwe will be a better Zimbabwe.
Thank you. Jacob, your final thoughts?
Yes, we're going to accelerate the coming back of the informal sector. We need to get people at work. We need to get them in their places of work. What we are doing is almost a soft genocide. We are killing our population. We have not provided formal employment for them. We have not provided funds for them. We are not cushioning anybody. We've got dilapidated food security systems, dilapidated health security systems. We've got a dilapidated economy. We need to make people survive. So we need to bring them back into the city. We need to bring them back at work so that they can take care of their families, take care of themselves, be able to heal themselves when they are sick, and be alive to benefit from any world class, whatever we want to call.
Let me get this clear. Are you calling for a lifting of the lockdown?
Yes, it's not serving any purpose at the present moment. Now, we can't understand the yo-yo figures. You know, it's one day they go to 200, the next day they go to down. People, it's just there to clamp down on people's livelihoods. All other places, the smaller towns, they are no longer obeying it. People are moving. If you go to Norton, go to some other places, people are moving. This thing has become an albatross on our neck. It's going to cause more death than the COVID itself, death of hunger, malnutrition, disease, and other issues that we can deal with. We need to man up, come up with measures that allow people to work and stop pretending that we are saving lives when we are killing lives.
Right, on that note, we have come to the end of our program. You have been watching the Mint Special. Our discussion this afternoon, the economic panorama. This broadcast is brought to you by Zim Papers TV Network ZTN and our partners, Labour and Economic Development Research Institute of Zimbabwe, Ledriz. Please also tune in to the economic panorama on Capi Talk every Thursday at 7 p.m. We'd like to thank our panelists, Nyasha Muchichwa, Senior Researcher at the Labour and Economic Development Research Institute of Zimbabwe, Ledriz, Wisborne Malaya, Secretary General, Zimbabwe Chamber of Informal Economy Associations, Zichia, and Jacob Mafume, Councillor at the City of Harare. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
A final comment. It is a fact that the coronavirus pandemic and government measures have impacted heavily on informal workers who lost their livelihood due to the necessary lockdown and slowing demand for their services and products. The abrupt announcement of the lockdown gave vendors little time to organize their savings and stock up on food. Vendors state that they cannot afford to be home and not work, whilst going out to work exposes them to lockdown restrictions and even arrest, while at the same time potentially contracting the virus. In Harare and other cities, the local authorities appear to have taken advantage of the national lockdown to redesign and attempt to reform the informal economy. Designated markets have been revamped and illegal vending sites at undesignated spaces demolished around the city. The delay in the payment of the government support announced means that most vendors are now living off savings. They need to restart their businesses after the lockdown. Many vendors and SMEs have reported that they fear they will not be able to return to work after restrictions are lifted. With a reported 76% of total employment in the country being informal, many live from hand to mouth. With such a large number of Zimbabwe citizens relying on informal trading for their livelihoods, this sector just simply cannot be ignored. I'm Andy Hodges. Goodbye, and you all be safe.